Welcome to the Time Bubble Podcast, the only podcast where guests get to travel in time. I'm your host, Jason Ayres, and I am joined today by my very good friend, Joanna Warrington. Jo is a history teacher, or was a history teacher for around 15 years, and has now moved on to become an author and lots of other things as well. Am I right, Jo?
Yes, I juggle a lot of things. I'm what they call a slashy. So I rent out a property.
That sounds rude.
It doesn't. It's because it's
Yeah.
so Airbnb / rental property / funeral celebrant / author.
Excellent. So how long have you been an author?
Since 2014.
Okay, same as me.
Oh, really? Yes.
Yeah.
My first book was inspired by my own life. I finally had enough time to be able to write, and I've been writing a diary of my dating experiences, and then it finally ended up to be a book length.
Excellent. Okay, and so since then, how many books have you written?
I think about 7, 8.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. And that's going well?
Yes, I've got my latest one's coming out in, I think, August. I'll publish it. It's great to be able to have that freedom with self-publishing to publish it when you want to. And it's going to be called Slippers on a First Date, with a question mark at the end. And it's based upon all my real experiences of dating. You couldn't make it up. There's lots of amusing stories within it, and essentially her or my quest to find lasting love, which doesn't seem to be going very well in my life.
But it does make for entertaining writing, and I've read many of your books and always enjoy the bits about the relationships because they are so true to life. Movie sex is just in the movies, and I always found your writing is very down to earth and perhaps the sort of thing that we've all experienced.
Yes, certainly. It's great to just keep a little notebook on you and write down little things as they happen in life. I'm a great believer in that. I was about to send the book, the final manuscript, to the editor this morning. And last night, as I arrived back at Gatwick from Spain, I got a random text from a guy I dated 2 years ago saying, "I love your new WhatsApp profile picture. I'm imagining you walking all over me." And I thought, you just couldn't make this up. This is going to have to be added into the book.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's move on with the podcast. I'll briefly explain the format. It's based on concepts in my books, Midlife Crisis and Rock Bottom, which I believe you've read both of those.
I love all of your books, Jason.
Thank you.
They're all great, and they appeal to our inner psyche of wanting to either go back into the past or into the future to deal with some of the issues in our own lives that we'd like to change.
Yes,
so,
exactly. Well, what the characters get to do in those books is travel back and revisit specific days in their life, which they can choose. And they can go back for any reason. It may be for positive reasons, negative reasons, to avoid a missed opportunity, or just to try something different. What we're going to ask you is to pick 3 days of your own, and then we will talk about them. So what have you got for your first day?
Well, on a general basis, I think if I was to go back in time, I would go back to see my parents again. I'd dearly love to see them and to see my children as youngsters again, little kids, to experience that again. However, I've chosen 3 days. So the first day was in the early 80s when I was at university in Lancaster. We went for a day out to York to see the Jorvik Viking Festival. And that always really sticks out very clearly in my mind. At the end of the day in York, we saw a Viking festival boat burning on the river. And there was a big procession of people dressed up as Vikings rampaging through York. And it was just, the atmosphere was wonderful. That smell of fire that lovely crackle, the pubs, the great atmosphere, the lovely beamed houses, and the smoke sort of wafting through the streets. I'll never forget that. And it was one of my favourite days at university. Overall, I didn't really enjoy university, but there were occasionally some amazing days out.
Yes, it's interesting how these events, I do attend a lot of these sorts of things now because they're always having reenactments of battles. We have the Battle of Evesham where I live. And certainly when I was younger, I definitely enjoyed these things more, perhaps not so much now. I think you're talking about the age you were at university, and you're just at that right age then where everything is still fresh and new, and you're with a group of friends, and it's all exciting. I always think if I was to attend such a thing today at the age I am, I wouldn't be as excited about it. There's just something about that thrill of youth and freedom that is hard to recapture when you're middle-aged.
I think actually today it taps into a little bit more, because I recently found out through doing tests on my DNA that I come from Norway or Sweden originally, so I could have been a Viking. So well, it appeals to me a bit more knowing, my heritage.
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, many of us do, because the festival you attended, I'm sure, was very good fun. But the real life Vikings were perhaps, if they had come to York, it would not have been such a pleasant experience. And since they basically raped and pillaged their way across the country, I would imagine there is a little bit of Viking probably in all of us.
Yes, certainly could be.
Well, there's that thing, isn't there, about when you go back so many generations. So we have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents. You've only got to go back a few, doubling up each time. Once you've gone back as far as the Vikings, you're talking millions of potential.
Yes, the gene pool's actually very small.
I mean, there's that thing, isn't there, that they say, I don't know if it's true or not, that every single person in Britain is descended from William the Conqueror, or everyone in the world is descended from Genghis Khan. Now, I've no idea if that's true or not, or it's one of these urban myths, but I'm sure...
I think it might be.
Yeah, someone has studied it.
It's amazing how small, actually, the gene pool is. When I did the DNA, and then it came back on Ancestry.com, and it said, right, this is the world... key right in to see where you come from, and it went right down, zoomed to the East Midlands, 95% East Midlands. And I thought, well, I knew that. Why did I waste £200 on this? But then it gathers information as the months go on. It's gathering more and more information on you, which is quite interesting. And so now it's come up with 95% Norway, 95% East Midlands.
I've often wondered if it's worth doing. It's one of those things I've looked at the site and I think, oh, that's quite interesting. And then as soon as they start asking for money, I sort of back away. But
it's a hobby in itself. It's a very, very time-consuming hobby.
It is. Yeah. I know they have that there's that program on, I think it's on the BBC, Who Do You Think You Are? Where they get various celebrities and investigate their past. So a similar idea.
It is. Very interesting. And it's all about the past, which relates again to your books, doesn't it, I guess?
Well, yeah. And obviously as a history teacher, you've got or a former history teacher, you've got a keen interest in that subject.
Oh, I love history.
Yes. Yes, I do too. One of the good things about this podcast is we've had quite a few people on who've picked various historical events to talk about, which has made for some interesting chats. Great. Okay, so that's the first day that you would visit. What about the second?
Yeah, so the second would be, I'd love to see my children little again, because it's so hard to remember them. As you've got children yourself, it's very hard to remember what they were like when they were little and the things they did, the things they said. You just want to capture that again and just take them in your arms and cuddle them and smell their hair and their skin and just that lovely warmth that you had. One day out that we had particularly sticks out in my mind, and it was a day out to Eastbourne, 1 August. And they were in this double pram. My son was only a few months old. I think he was about probably 2 actually. And my daughter was about 5. And we went down to the station and we got the train down to Eastbourne. And I hadn't known at that time that it was the Airborne. So it's an airfare that goes on every year. And we went down and we had, I think they loved their Knickerbocker Glories and their ice cream sodas in Macari's, which is a very old-fashioned 1950s cafe. So we went in there for lunch, and then we went onto the beach and we were watching the planes above and the red arrows, and it was just a wonderful atmosphere. I just sat there looking up at these planes, and the children were paddling in the sea. And it was a lovely day. And then the following day, and this kind of reminds me a little bit about time travel, how you can manipulate what actually happened. So the next day, I said to my husband, let's go down to Eastbourne again, because we had such a lovely day. And he was quite interested in the planes. But that next day, as soon as we got there, it poured with rain. It was absolutely relentless. And he was a bit bored and he just wanted to go in a pub. So we sat in a pub overlooking what was going on. And the kids were bored and messing around in the pub, and he was getting more drunk. And it was a horrible day out. And it reminds me of my favourite film is called About Time. So it's a time travel film.
I know it.
In which the guy goes into a wardrobe and goes back in time. So there are 2 versions of his wedding, this fantastic wedding on the beach with beautiful sun, and then the real version when it's raining and the marquee blows away and everybody's arguing. So, that's my time travel day.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that I picked up on there which are interesting. The fact that you went back the second day, and I often think this about experiences in my own life. If you go somewhere and you have say a meal out, you go to a restaurant and you just have the best meal out you've ever had, or you go on holiday or away for a weekend and you stay somewhere and it's just perfect. And I think to some extent, maybe you got lucky on that particular occasion. You went somewhere and, all the cards fell in your favor to make that day special. And it's almost a mistake to go back, because like you went back the following day thinking it would be as good, and it can never measure up to that perfect day that you had before.
That's so true.
Though obviously through this podcast you can, because you can go back to the actual perfect day. But it was interesting what you said about the kids as well, because parenting's a strange thing. You they start off as babies and they go to school and they become teenagers, obviously, and things don't change on a day-to-day basis. So your kids are the same tomorrow as they were today, and they're the same yesterday as they are today. But the changes are sort of imperceptible and long-term, and you don't really notice them until maybe you browse back through some old photographs, or like on Facebook, you get this thing that comes up, a timeline from a picture 7 years ago, and you see the kids and they're little, and you're at some place that you used to go with them, and you think, oh my God, that world's gone.
Yes, it's completely gone. I mean, with my youngest, she had black hair when she was born, and then somehow it ended up to be blonde. I don't know what day that happened or when that happened.
Yeah.
And just visiting my sister in Spain, she's got 2 dogs. And every time I go there, she talks to the dogs as if they're little children. Oh, Baba, come to mummy. Those dogs never grow up, but my kids have long grown up.
Yes, well, mine are teenagers now, so they're still living at home. It's very hard to imagine a time when they won't be here, but I know that time will come. And I've been so used to having them around. It's like, what am I going to do with myself? But
you will go through a grieving process, that de-nesting. It's not really talked about, but I know several friends that are going through it at the moment, and they are absolutely devastated, crying all the time. it's a real agonizing process for some people.
Yeah, I think
some people are happy though as well.
I think
get
it
their
will.
house back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be for me because I've been self-employed for 15 years and working at home. I mean, I make my full-time living writing the books now, but I'm always with the kids, and I'm so used to that. And
you have a great time with them, don't you? A really good relationship.
Yeah. Okay.
Playing football and
all sorts of stuff. It helps keep me fit because we go out on our bikes and they're getting bigger and faster, and we go on these bike rides and we're going up the hills, and I'm having to really push it to keep up with them. So they are helping me with my long-term plans to get fitter. But the rate they're going, they'll be leaving me behind, and they'll be waiting at the next village for me to catch up soon.
Oh.
Brilliant. Okay, so day number 3.
Yes, day number 3 is set in 1988. So that was the year after I left university. Now, having worked really hard for my degree and actually not spending a lot of time enjoying myself at university, I really had a ball of a time in 1988, best year of my life. I went completely wild. I dated lots of men and just went to lots of parties and so on. And one day, I went to the South of England show, which is in Ardingly in Sussex. The night before, I had spent the night with this guy who I thought I loved him. I thought I was dating him, but actually he was dating someone else. As we emerged from his bedroom, came down the stairs, his landlord said, "Oh, God, another woman."
Oh,
Andrew, you can't keep. And I thought, this. Anyway, he put that aside, and we got in the car with 3 other guys and went off to the South of England show. On the way out, we'd had a brilliant time drinking and just sampling different beers and sitting around in hay all day. And it was a beautiful hot day. On the way out, we were all a bit crazy, and we were driving along, and a couple of us did moonies out of the window. And one guy at the front, he just sort of turned the window down and got his hand out and slapped the bottom of this passerby, this woman. The type of things you just couldn't get away with today, but it just sticks out in my mind as such a wonderful day. And then that evening I had to go to my boss at work was having a party. And I went to that and I thought, oh, God, why didn't I stay with those guys for a bit longer? It was a really stuffy party in which I had to behave myself. And I was so hungover and tired, I couldn't really enjoy it anyway.
So if you could go back to that day, presumably you would stay with the first group of guys.
I certainly would, yes. And we probably would have ended up at another pub and another night of frolicking.
I have to say, I love the idea of you doing a moonie out of the car window. Now, you see, I know you as a respectable middle-aged woman like myself, in our 50s, and we never did things like that, And I think that your children, I don't know if you've told them that story, would be,
I don't know whether I have actually.
You didn't do that, Mum. I'm so embarrassed.
Oh, they're always embarrassed by things I do. Even now, they completely cringe.
1988 was a great year because that was the year that I was 18. So I'm a couple of years younger than you. So it was, I hadn't gone to college at that stage. I was doing A-levels. I have to say, I only really just scraped through my A-levels because I discovered this magical place around about that time called the pub. And directly opposite the College of Further Education in Oxford, where we were doing our A-levels, was this wonderful old-fashioned spit and sawdust boozer called the Duke of York. And sadly, it's not there anymore. It's been demolished for modern flats. But it opened at 11 o'clock every day. And we used to have my timetable. I had lessons from 9 to 10:30, and then from 3 o'clock to 4:30, which was fatal because there was this 4-hour gap in the
Big
middle.
gap in the middle.
And the guy that ran the place, his name was Pete, and he'd run it since something like 1939, which seems incredible. And he did retire at the end of that year. He's this wonderful old chap with this big handlebar moustache and really old-fashioned gent with a waistcoat and everything else. And he knew we were all. I mean, most of us going over there were sort of 17 or 18, a lot of them underage, but he didn't seem to mind. So we would all be there at 11 o'clock, banging on this door. Come on, Pete, and going in there and
sounds wonderful.
Drinks. And it was a time. I guess I should have been being more responsible and doing my A-levels and working hard. But I was with this group of people, and it was, again, like, you going out with the guys in the car. It was like that every day. It was just fun and carefree, and we did all sorts of things. We had drinking competitions, and there's people going back to college and falling in the river because they were drunk. And again, this is probably on a par with your mooning out of the car window.
Excellent.
Totally irresponsible.
And how did you fund all that drinking?
I had various different jobs that I used to do at the weekend. So I worked in a local restaurant doing washing up on Saturday nights and Sunday lunch times. I had another time I was working at the Little Chef, which was pretty depressing, to be honest.
Yeah, Little Chef, I remember that.
But I'd get, like, I don't know, for the washing up job, I'd get about £20 or something, but it was less than £1 for a pint in those days. So it was, and we had free bus passes to Oxford and such like. So nothing seemed expensive, whereas nowadays it's like so expensive to go out. I still go to the pub. I couldn't live without going to the pub, but it's a big chunk. A big chunk of money, especially if you get into a few rounds and have a bit of a night out. So
yes,
but yeah, it was 1988. Definitely a year.
It's a good year
to remember.
It's a good vintage year.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about 3 days of your life. What we do now is we increase the scope a little bit, so we can talk about other historical events or people, perhaps beyond your own personal experience. So the fourth question is, if you could fill somebody else's shoes, past, present, or even future, who would it be and why?
Yeah, well, one of the problems I've found with writing is that I'm sitting at a desk all day and I was just putting on more and more weight. And when I finally sort of stepped on the scales and reached 11 stone, I thought enough's enough. So I went on a diet and I started to sort of exercise a bit more. And I've always loved swimming. So in the last year, doing a lot of swimming and dieting, I've lost 2 stone. And I do a lot of sea swimming, so I go down to Eastbourne and the south coast.
Yeah, because you live quite close to the sea, don't you?
I live it's about 40 minutes from the sea.
I would love that, but we're right in the middle of
You're
England.
Right in the middle of the country.
It's a full day out to
you
even get to.
You could do wild swimming. There are some river locations.
Yeah.
And when I'm out, I also go to the pool as well, public pool, but mostly I like the sea when it's warm enough. So when I'm out in the sea and it's a beautiful day with a blue sky and I'm looking around at the seagulls and the boats and maybe paddle boarders, and then I see that line, that horizon in the distance, and want to sort of, in my mind's eye, want to know what's beyond there. And so I think if I had the chance, I would be the first. I would like to relive the experience of the first swimmer to swim the channel. And he was Matthew Webb, and he swam it at the age of 27 in 1875. He started off, I think, by swimming in the river, the Severn, below Ironbridge back in the day. And then he set out on the channel. His first attempt was unsuccessful. And then he started out on the channel. He was smeared in porpoise fat and he was wearing a red swimsuit of silk. And he was accompanied on the way and given brandy and beef tea. He braved all the jellyfish on the way. So I'd like to know what it would be like to cross the channel. Would the waves be big out to sea? Would it be colder, the temperature? What sort of challenges would you face? And that feeling that, there's you're such a tiny little being, and that vastness of the sea. I often look out when I do a cruise, I look out that absolute vastness of the sea, and just the whole awe of it is quite incredible. And that the power of water, water is an incredible, it can give you life and it can take your life away.
I'm always amazed, really, that anyone has even been able to manage to do that, because the thought of crossing such a large stretch of water, it's almost beyond comprehension. I suppose it's the equivalent of climbing Everest or something along those lines. But I swim quite a lot, or used to swim quite a lot, and I'd go up to the pool and do 20 lengths or something like that, and that would seem a lot, and that's in the safety of a swimming pool, but that would just be a tiny fraction of the distance. And also swimming at the sea, you can swim out a little way, but even if you get out, so you're 200 or 300 yards away from shore, it seems quite a daunting amount just to swim back.
Yes.
And
when I'm swimming in the pool back and forward, and I get to about 60 lengths over an hour, and I always think to myself, I could do a bit longer. How long physically could I swim for?
Yes. So how 60 lengths, so a normal swimming pool, like the council have, are they like 25 meters? Is it something like that? I'm just trying to figure out. I've my calculator handy or whatever. So, how much 60 lengths is? So that would be 1.5 kilometers. So roughly a mile, and across the channel would be.
Oh yeah, it's 21 miles, isn't it?
So you're talking 20 times what you did there. But of course, you're not in a nice warm level swimming pool. It's massive waves going everywhere, and of course the cold. I know they grease people up, don't they, with the goose fat, and they got people.
And I think they've stopped doing it now, because the waterways are so busy with different boats and vessels going along, and the health and safety, of course, that's one of the issues. So I don't think people can do it anymore. So
it's not something that can be done at all, or can it be done under? Because wasn't there was some guy, I can't remember his name, the guy that was in Little Britain, David Williams, didn't he do it for charity? I recall a few years ago.
Maybe it has been done.
But perhaps it can be, but only under prearranged.
Yes. No, I heard a program on Radio 4 a while back about different people that swam in very cold conditions in ice, and people that swam on the channel. And I think they said on the program that it's been banned, but I could be wrong.
That's a shame. But then again, of course, a lot of things have been banned, haven't they, or restricted, unfortunately, in the interests of health and safety. And it's quite sad in a way. I mean, we talk about the first person to swim the Channel, we talk about the first person to climb Everest, first person to the South Pole, all these type of things, and there are not a lot of frontiers left really now to conquer. I was thinking back to the time of Matthew Webb back in the 19th century. There were all these things still to do, and it must have been really exciting for adventurers, the race to be the first person to do these things.
Yes, it's always the firsts in life that are very significant.
And now you're not allowed to do them at all. So, so we're back to where we were before they did it.
Yes.
One final question. If you could go anywhere as you are now, so not within your own life, but literally get in your time machine and go somewhere, where would you go?
Oh, without a doubt, I'd go to America in the 1950s, a small town America, to see the simplicity of life. I would go straight into an American diner. I'd have my pancakes I'll have a big milkshake, something like a lime milkshake or a cherry milkshake. That's one of my favourites. And put the jukebox on and listen to sort of Buddy Holly, Elvis, or the Everly Brothers. And I'd be wearing one of those lovely big skirts. My mum had one of those skirts.
Yes, that they used to wear to the prom.
Yes, it'd just be amazing. That innocent life as well before the 60s, before Kennedy was shot and before the race riots and so on, when life was just a lot simpler. One of my favourite films is Back to the Future.
I was thinking, when you mentioned it, I was going to say that first scene when he goes back to 1955, and he comes into town and Mr. Sandman's playing, and it's...
I see myself there.
I've been on the set of that film.
Really?
When I went to Los Angeles about 18 years ago, I went round Universal Studios and did a tour. Yes. And you actually go into Hill Valley and they've got the clock and the diary, and it was just...
I think I've been there myself. I have been to Universal Studio. So I can't remember exactly whether it was that set.
But Back to the Future is great and an inspiration for all of us. As you know, I write time travel. It is the definitive time travel movie, which so many others have sort of copied or aped since, but I think it's very hard to beat that original. It really is. Yes, though time travel is a great theme, and I will continue to enjoy your books. Yes,
so you're writing one at the moment, aren't you? I'm intriguing.
I'm putting them out about one a year now, which is not as fast as I was when I started, but I like to take my time and craft them. And they're all part of one long series. So this is going to be book 13 and they all interlink. So one of the things I like to do in these books is I'll have a scene maybe in book 4, which sets something up, which can become the plot of book 9, which is very rewarding for people that read them all the way through. Trying to get the continuity right becomes more and more of a challenge. So when you edit a book, as you know, you've got to go through and check that everything ties up. Well, I've got to check not only that it ties up within this book, but it ties up with all the other 12 books as well. And as one reviewer said, you must have like a massive whiteboard in your head with arrows going everywhere. And I seem to have the sort of brain that can organise things.
You can carry a lot of information, I've noticed.
Yeah. So
you like your figures, don't you, as well? Stats.
Yeah. I think it might be a sort of semi-autistic thing because my son's autistic and he has many of the same traits, which makes me think I've probably got a touch of that myself, even though it's never been diagnosed. So, of course, you've got your new book coming out as well.
Yes, Slippers on a First Date.
Earlier. Tell me about your books, if people are interested. Where can they find them?
Yes, my books are all on Amazon. I've got 3 in my thalidomide saga series, which is charting the thalidomide crisis in a fictional way. I've also got a couple of books on the Magdalene laundries. Every family has one, and the Catholic Woman's Dying Wish. And I also have one of my latest ones, Don't Blame Me, which within that story is the story of the death of my first child. But it's set in Kent, where I grew up among the apple orchards. So that's about grief, but it's a happy book as well within it. Yeah.
I think as writers, it's useful to draw on our own experiences and fictionalize them to some degree. And I think most of us, if you read my books, there are a lot of the anecdotes and stories in there, particularly about some of the youthful things, are inspired by things that really happened. And in some ways, it's almost therapeutic. If you do have...
Yes, definitely.
Do have traumatic events in your life, writing it all down and putting it in the shoes of another character is a good way of coming to terms with those things.
Yes, the details there, but the circumstances are all mashed up, as it were, into a different story.
Indeed. Okay, well, this has been a fascinating chat, as always. I hope you enjoyed it.
It's been great, Jason. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
So the episode will go out on YouTube and on all the other podcasting sites as well. So, for example, Apple, Spotify, places like that. And if you have stumbled across this, please give us a like. Please tell us what you liked or didn't like, because we're always trying to improve the podcast. And subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us, because it is a new podcast and we're hoping to grow. So anything you can do, greatly appreciated. And obviously you coming on today, Jo, that's greatly appreciated too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.